Hello everyone. Not many of you know of my educational background, but unlike what you might think, I wasn't enrolled in an art-related college. I'm a self-taught artist, and in fact, what I majored in was a completely irrelevant field. I majored in engineering. You may wonder, why did I study that? It's a long story and I'll tell you all about it in a moment. But I want you to know that I'm not sharing this just to vent. I just don't wish for anyone to repeat my mistakes and go through what I did. As a child, I was always fascinated by anime. For a long time, I remember dreaming of studying animation in Japan. But as I grew up, I realized that that dream was not possible for a girl like me, due to cultural and societal restrictions. So I started thinking more realistically. At some point, I was thinking I'd study architectural engineering, since it's the number one choice for artists in my community. But at the very end of my high school life, I was very determined to get into a multimedia major, as I heard that they teach a bit of animation, and that sounded like the most inspiring option among the ones available back then. But the tipping point was what happened next. I graduated high school as a top student. I was among the highest achievers, and as much happy and thankful I was for that, it was kinda the reason for my misery in the coming years. In my community, any high achiever is expected to go into one of two colleges, medicine or engineering. I hated studying medical sciences and biology, so medicine was an absolute no for me. But I liked physics and I loved math, so I thought engineering is a possibility for me. During that time, people from here and there kept meddling into my decision, trying to convince me to study this and that, and as a raw and indecisive teenager, I did eventually get persuaded by the community to get into engineering. Because, in their eyes, that was the right thing to do, as they said it provides you later with a so-called guaranteed job opportunity after graduation, which literally sounds like a joke to me now. No one in my family forced me to get into engineering. I enrolled into that out of my own will, because I wanted to make them proud and didn't want to disappoint them. At the age of 18, I didn't have the mindset that can tell a good decision from a disastrous one. I went with the flow because I thought adults knew better, and I totally believed back then that I'd eventually just get married and be a homemaker, so why bother? It wouldn't make a difference what I studied. And with that messed up mentality, I started studying energy engineering. You know how I chose that? I literally stared at the options offered in the engineering college and cancelled them one by one until I was left with this last option. It was good at the start, felt like a continuation of high school studies, but soon enough in my second year, I realized what I had done to myself. I was in a purely scientific major, no room for creativity whatsoever. It was very dull and full of equations that would only get more frightening the more we advanced. The only space for creativity was in scientific research, but as an artist, you know, that is totally not the kind of creativity I'd look for. It's needless to say that by that time, I felt out of place. That became clear as day when I did my 8-week internship by the end of my third year. That experience was completely unpleasant to me. The only good two things about it were that I finished one more thing of my graduation requirements, and that I realized I don't want to ever work in the industrial side of engineering. You might ask, if I had such a terrible time, why did I not switch majors? Well, I wasn't brave enough to quit what I despised back then. I thought I had to finish what I started. It was very hard for me to accept that I've wasted years of my life for no result. Plus, and most importantly, despite being a top student, I wasn't granted a scholarship. My family had paid a lot for me to be studying there, and I couldn't burden them with my indecisiveness and then have them bear the expenses. In fact, not having a scholarship was my number one motivation to study hard, so I can get a high GPA that would grant me a discount of tuition fees for the following semester. So yes, I had to gather myself together, finish the requirements, and graduate. If you think that's where the story ends, wait, we're not even halfway there. I was programmed to study hard since my very first day in school, and naturally, I continued doing that in university too. So I graduated college with highest honors. And being the straight A student I was, my instructors believed with passion that I could be the next brilliant scientist and that I should totally invest my time in scientific research and pursue graduate studies all the way up to a PhD. I was in denial at first. I knew that wasn't for me. Just because I studied hard and got high grades didn't mean I had the potential to be a scientist. I know they had good intentions and wanted the best for me and my future, but most of them didn't know about my artistic side, or rather, who I actually am. But hearing that over and over and being afraid and skeptical of the future, what they said got to me, and I started applying for a master's degree. But internally, I had one condition. I would only get into graduate studies if I get a scholarship. I wouldn't pay an extra cent for something I disliked. Since I hated engineering industry work, academia sounded more appealing to me. Besides, being in academia meant I get a chance to teach, and I've always enjoyed teaching, so it didn't sound like a bad deal. Because I was applying for a scholarship, I got rejected multiple times. It took me 9 trials before I finally landed myself an assistantship in a university. That wait time ended me up with a gap year. I took a year off and stayed home. In that year, due to the multiple rejections, I had started to completely lose hope in continuing my studies. So I thought, that's it, I want to focus on my art side. And I did just that. I participated in a Comic-Con and started working on my YouTube channel. The colors were finally getting back to my life. Slowly, the master's degree idea started fading away. But things ended up escalating, and I found myself, literally within a day and night, a master's student in mechanical engineering. I know, an even worse choice for a major. But this time, I was finally granted a scholarship. I was studying for free in return for working as a teaching assistant. When I first started that, I was jumping off happiness. Being a teaching assistant sounded like music to my ears. I finally got something I liked out of this dull engineering mess I was in. But that happiness soon started fading as I realized how more complicated the courses have become. The college was dull, and I was surrounded by people who were only into studying and researching, so I spent my time doing that as well, while drawing so little every now and then. And there was this big frightening monster chasing me since day one of my postgraduate studies. The master's thesis. If I sum up my experience of doing my master's, I would say the fear of my master's thesis almost destroyed my mental health. I hated it and despised it from the bottom of my heart. It was a hell I kept pushing aside and wanted to run away from as much as I could. Actually, that was the case in my undergrad graduation project and every single engineering project I had to do. Every time an instructor talked about the term project for a course, I would gulp, feel stiff, and get overridden by anxiety. So you can imagine what a 2 years worth of work thesis would do to me. My initial happiness went down the drain as I realized what I had put myself into. However, I thought, this time, my studies were optional. I had put myself into postgraduate studies by my own choice, and I should be able to pull out from them and seek a career that brought me joy. With that mindset, my academic performance degraded, and I almost skipped the finals of my first semester. I was determined I'd leave the studies and focus on being a full-time artist and chasing my old dreams of studying in Japan. So I decided to withdraw from college for the following semester. And in that time, I started studying Japanese seriously and took my channel and my artwork seriously too. I drew a lot in that off semester, and my skills and channel definitely saw a boost. But I was going through very emotionally hard times, and staying home only made it worse. I barely had a life outdoors, and being on my own drawing in front of a screen definitely didn't help at all. So, seeing how my attempt at doing art full-time felt like a failure, I thought maybe I truly better return to university and finish my degree, while drawing on the side. It felt like drawing had become a source of stress, so I thought maybe keeping it on the side would help preserve its radiance and keep it as a stress reliever. So I went back to university, determined to finish the graduation requirements. But this time, I thought I'm gonna live the best of my life. For the first time in my life, I said I'm not gonna focus so much on my studies. It's fine if I'm not among the top students. As long as I was getting the bare minimum that wouldn't jeopardize my scholarship, I was fine. And that was one of the best decisions I took, because it made me experience a wonderful academic life. I met a lot of interesting people, joined in coordinating countless events, and even hosted a drawing workshop in the university. Those experiences are so valuable to me even now, because they tremendously helped in my personal growth and development. But despite doing that, I still felt so dead on the inside every time I stepped into the engineering college. I was buried with never-ending scientific tasks that were both time and energy consuming. And during that time, I came to the understanding that my brain was in a binary state and wired to do only one of two things at a time, either art or science. When I got too involved in my studies, I'd have so little inspiration for drawing and would go on for weeks not drawing a single thing. And the opposite happened when I got into the drawing mood. I would just want to draw and live a colorful life, and it would be super hard for me to get back into studying. That was torture, a hell I lived in on a daily basis. So I had to gather every bit of energy I had and pushed myself to work day and night to finish the thesis and graduate. It was so hard, but thankfully I managed to do it. When the thesis was accepted, I could finally feel alive, take a deep breath, and see the skies blue again. As I graduated at last, I was very optimistic I'd land a teaching job in a university. Holding a higher degree means that it would be relatively easier for me to get hired, right? Wrong. Because guess what? There were barely any vacant opportunities in academia. This led me to start even considering a job in industry, despite hating it. Because, due to my life situation back then, I was desperate to get hired somewhere, anywhere. But remember how I told you that a guaranteed job opportunity sounds like a joke now? Here's why. If you think about it, when you have thousands of graduates from the same field and only a limited number of job opportunities, how do you think everyone would get hired? It doesn't make sense at all. The competition on the limited vacancies obviously gets really high. Of course, during my years of study, I wasn't interested at all to build a portfolio in engineering, so it's only natural I wasn't fit to compete for a position. I'm not gonna get too much into that because I'd never finished talking, but in short, I couldn't land a job in engineering. Therefore, I decided to go ahead and apply for countless jobs in completely different fields, anything that I had the ability to do. Throughout my postgraduate studies and soon after graduation, my mind was constantly searching for alternative career options because I wanted out of the engineering path. So I experimented with different fields over the years. I tried working on the side in administration, PR, graphic design, proofreading, translation, and even tried scientific research for a bit. Of course, the last one killed me on the inside and I could barely last 2 months in it. I even considered getting a higher degree in psychology, sociology, or sustainability. I don't know how that would have been possible with my experience, but I was so desperate to attain any opportunity that sounded more appealing and would take me out of the engineering path. At last, I was determined I'd do a PhD in sustainability so that I can contribute in doing something good for the environment. And getting a PhD would grant me the option to work as an instructor, so it sounded okay. I'd work in teaching for a few years, and later, maybe years later, I could go back to doing art full-time. But, wait, what? Does that sound reasonable? Despite doing well in every job I undertook, I didn't feel fulfilled at all. I would constantly look at the time and count the hours and minutes left before I can go home. I was dragging myself every day by force. If it wasn't for the good work environment in terms of people, I wouldn't have lasted a week. That struggle almost killed my passion for drawing. I felt super drained both physically and emotionally. I was truly on the verge of quitting drawing for good. I felt very overwhelmed and had to take a pause. I desperately needed that, because I reached a point where I was gonna burst. I couldn't handle it anymore. I felt so messed up. I had to question myself. Is this worth living a lifetime of pain and suffering? Years from now, will I be proud and happy of the life I've lived, or will I just look back to see a pile of regrets? I already had enough regrets. I didn't want more. If I don't take charge of my life and fight for my passion and colorful dreams, no one will. and I'd end up living in misery for the rest of my life. Drawing was the only thing I truly enjoyed doing and would go on for hours without feeling the flow of time. It makes me feel fulfilled. It's my joy. Yet, I was still asking myself, what do I want to be? I finally accepted that I didn't need to search for a new career path. I already had it. It has always been with me. I realized that a fulfilling career is more than just a day job and a paycheck. It is a thing that occupies your mind on a 24-hour basis. It is a thing that you have countless ideas for, that you'd feel one lifetime is not long enough to do everything you wish to do. It's your very reason for getting out of bed every morning. It's the journey you spend your life in. So, after a good time spent thinking and analyzing my state, I finally came to the decision. This time, once and for all, I'm quitting engineering. I'm freeing myself. I'm never going back there again. I may hold the degrees, but I'm not an engineer. I'm an artist. That's who I am now. That's who I've always been. And that's who I'll always be. I'm still recovering from the mental damage all this caused me, and it might take some time for me to be back in full productivity power. However, as much as it's hard, I want to choose not to regret the bad decisions I made, because I better focus on the positive side, for this journey taught me so many life lessons, and maybe without it, I wouldn't have realized that I wanted to be an artist so badly. So I want to be thankful for it. And although I've lost so much time and energy, it's never too late to get back on track and work on improving. So that is my story, in a short format actually. My situation was more sophisticated, and I had way more struggles and obstacles than I've mentioned, but I hope you got the message I wanted to deliver. Never let go of your passion. You'll save yourself so much pain, and trust me, you won't regret it. As a final word, I want to note that I'm not against engineering or any other major or career path. In fact, if you're into engineering or so out of pure passion, you have my full support and utter respect. I just truly don't wish anyone goes through the horrible experience of putting themselves in the wrong place and regretting it for years to come. The younger you are, the easier it is to pull away. But the more you walk along the wrong path, the harder it would be to change directions, because as we grow up, life responsibilities increase and decision-making becomes trickier. I came across so many artists that gave up drawing and crafts because their irrelevant majors and jobs killed their time and creativity. So I truly, sincerely ask you from the bottom of my heart that you don't do this to yourself. I'm aware that not everyone has the privilege to choose what to study or even get an education, and I'm aware and thankful that I have privilege that made it possible for me to be where I am today. But no matter the situation, if you have something that you love doing, something that brings you joy, please hold on to it. We're at an unpredictable age. The prospering job market of today might be a suffering one in the near future. So never take anyone's word for granted and study a certain thing just because it has a current high job demand. You'll be the one doing the job, not them. Study for the sake of learning, to satisfy your curiosity, to ignite a spark that would keep you going for life. Times are changing, and these days you can literally make a career out of anything you are interested in as long as you have the passion drive. So go out and search for your passion if you haven't yet found it, be it drawing or any other thing. And if you already know it, no matter how hard your life, please hold on to it and cherish it. It was a long video, but a very important one to me. If you've watched this far, I thank you very much. Once again, please hold on to your passion. Have a great one.